Good morning. This is the morning news on WSBA. Hour number 3. It's your turn to make the call. Happy New Year to you. I'm Gary Sutton.
I'm Joel Sears. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year. And WSBA news time is 8:10. And enjoyed watching everything on TV the last couple of days. I've been sick, so I didn't get to go out anywhere. But I've been really enjoyed watching the last few days on TV and the bowl games, especially Central Florida. By the way, big upset last night over Baylor. They were 17-point underdogs, beat Baylor like some kind of basketball score. And really loved to see Michigan State win yesterday. Had our pork and sauerkraut.
We did too.
Good.
Is that?
It's a luck thing. I think it's an old German custom. I never really looked it up. But anyway, it's your turn to make the call this hour at 1-800-357-0910. Also like to remind you can follow us at Twitter at GGarySutton. And I put a piece up on here, the one we're going to talk about here in a moment, Joel and I, called The Year the Progressive Narrative Collided with Reality, 2013. The Year the Progressive Narrative Collided with Reality. And you're welcome to comment, but if you want to read the article, I put it up there. It was written by a guy named Bill Frezza, to give proper accreditation here to him. Bill Frezza wrote this article on Tuesday, I believe, or actually on Monday. But it's a great piece, and we want to share some of that with you this morning. But we'll also take your calls at 1-800-357-0910. Your resolution for the country for the new year, what would it be from your particular perspective as a citizen? You can also take part in this conversation we're going to have here as well this morning on this whole piece, and we're going to kind of pick it apart a little bit. So if you'll bear with us and join in, 1-800-357-0910, write it down. If you've never called before, today's a great time to call. Forgive my voice. This is as good as it's been over the last 4 days, and got a little bit of a sinus infection. In fact, I'm taking this drug. I went to my doctor the other day, and she gave me this drug that I take, I think, once a day, and then I'm taking like this Flonase thing twice a day. I have to spray my nose. So my voice is a lot better now, but she said, one of the really weird side effects of this drug, she said, it doesn't happen very often. It's, so like watching these things on TV, they say, here's this drug that's going to help you. And then for 95% of the commercial, they tell you all the horrible things are going to happen to you.
Sign me
your
up.
Your hair will fall out, you'll get one eye, all that stuff. She said, your Achilles tendon might rupture. I said, what? She goes, your Achilles tendon might rupture. So if you start getting, bad feeling down in your Achilles area, stop taking the drugs. Like she needed to tell me that one.
Sit down.
Yeah, sit down and stop taking the drugs. I thought, whew, what kind of drug?
That's pretty weird.
Yeah, for a sinus infection, of all things.
Maybe it collects in your feet.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Anyway, this piece by Bill Frezza goes like this. It's the year the progressive narrative collided with reality, 2013. See if you agree or disagree with this. You may disagree. When it comes to crafty winning political narratives, progressives, see liberals, have a natural advantage over conservatives. That's because progressives have a free hand to project rosy visions of the future, while conservatives must constantly defend against progressives' distorted depictions of the past. Two fundamental techniques, and this is the basis of the whole article, undergird progressive success at narrative spinning. The first is skillful framing of the debate through investing heavily in public opinion-making machinery. This disarms critics, while giving lawmakers cover to vote for bills they've never read or understood. Thus framed, policies are judged only by their stated intentions, never the actual results. Well, I'll tell you what, stop right there. Therein lies a great difference. What I wanted to do, have you ever run into these people that says, well, I had good intentions. Obamacare had great intentions. Didn't work out too well.
Okay, and what's the old saw?
Yeah.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Sure. Now, this allows politicians to promote new pieces of legislation named for their lofty objectives, even if the thousands of pages of vague and contradictory content deliver just the opposite. Stop there. I heard Kathleen Sebelius say the other day, she's really feeling upbeat about Obamacare in 2014. And the reason that she's feeling upbeat about it is because so many more people will now have insurance available to them that didn't have it before. They'll have health care available to them where they didn't have it before, period. And I'm thinking, and how many people's lives have you screwed up to get it, was my thought after that sentence, because it's not period. It's a big comma. How many people have you screwed up to get this right? Is that the way a policy is supposed to be done? Sounds great to say the Affordable Care Act. Is it affordable? Question still out for debate. What about the idea of doing something for the whole country? The idea that somehow it is now in vogue to be able to go out and help a segment of society while hurting the rest of society, or somehow equaling up from the rest of society what they have exacted unjustly before from those who have been left out, is what we're operating on. And that goes back to this intentions thing right here.
Yeah, the demonizing of the haves.
Exactly.
If you have anything, you can be demonized.
And you think about
because
everything.
It was an advantage, Gary. It was just luck.
It just handed to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you didn't work for it.
You're one of the privileged.
Sure, you didn't do anything. I mean, you went out and got a job. How dare you? And now you're receiving all this stuff. And what happens in the long run is this idea of redistribution, which they don't talk about, but that's what it is very attractive. And it's very attractive if you have a group of people to whom you are preaching and saying, well, I'm going to get you more stuff from that guy over there because he screwed you.
Well, as long as you're the guy in the middle, you're the arbiter of who has what and who needs, then fine. And of course, the game is played like this. I'll take money from you so I can give it to the person who needs it, but it has to come through me.
Right.
So I'll take my little piece because obviously I need to be paid as the gatekeeper. Sure. So that's how I make my money, and I don't have to play the other game. I don't have to take any of my money and put it in the pot that's going to be redistributed. So
the very first thing here is for progressives is you have to say what you're doing in such a way that it sounds really good. It has good intentions, okay? Now, the second part of this is the dodging of all responsibility for failure. Have we seen that at all this year? This is accomplished by blaming insufficient resources, the prior administration, the greedy 1% sabotage by Republicans, or even the people's obdurate failure to appreciate the progressive benefits conferred upon them. When the going gets tough, reality can be dismissed with a slogan: forward.
Hope and change in the first go-around, forward now.
But the problem is the word forward becomes code speak for forward for the group that we were talking to, not for the rest of the country. And the fact that they split the country into these different groups of the haves and have-nots. We hear that all the time. The haves and have-nots. Well, the haves are doing just fine. The have-nots, they're not doing well. There's the biggest disparity between them right now that we've ever seen, the biggest gap between them. And why is it? Ostensibly because the haves have been cheating the system and the have-nots haven't gotten a chance. And that's all part of this whole thing, too, about packaging. But we're going to come back right after this quick break and talk more about this idea of dodging all responsibility for failure, that it's the system that doesn't work. Do you really believe that? 2013, the year the progressive narrative collided with reality, by Bill Frezza, a piece that we found here in Forbes magazine. By the way, Bill Frezza describes himself as, I'm a recovering venture capitalist, a former engineer and entrepreneur, and an aspiring writer. After 35 years on the bleeding edge of technology, I'm increasingly focused on the public commentary and free market advocacy. I thought that I'm a recovering venture capitalist. I like that term. Talk about progressivism here, and just to kind of recap, we said there's two fundamental techniques that undergird progressive success at narrative spinning. Number one, skillful framing of the debate through investing heavily in public opinion-making machinery. So in other words, you've got this great idea. It's going to help people. It's going to make their lives better. It's going to really work. The second one is the dodging of all responsibility for failure if it doesn't. That it must be the system that's not working, that something's wrong here. Yeah, and they'll usually pay some kind of respect to, well, capitalism works okay, but basically, and then they'll say it in code speak, socialism works better. Redistribution works better. And you see this an awful lot. You saw it a lot from President Obama this past year when things broke down. I don't know if the words "I'm sorry" have ever been in his lexicon, but he doesn't seem to be able to say it very well.
Well, he's sorry about the outcome.
Yeah.
He's not sorry about the process or the objectives.
I'm sorry about the fact I didn't understand the whole damn system before
that
I put it out
made a
there.
mistake.
Yeah. Now, the article goes on to say progressivism has been on the rise since basically they elected Woodrow Wilson to become president of the United States, who went from he kept us out of war to fighting a war to end all wars. Woodrow Wilson became the prototype activist president. He relegated the concept of strictly limited and enumerated powers to the dustbin of history while helping to turn the Constitution into a living document. The federal government was set on a new course with a social, economic, and cultural footprint that has been expanding ever since. They take it back to Wilson to start this with. Progressivism reached its pinnacle in the presidency of Barack Obama, running on hope and change and claiming the mortgage meltdown was Bush's fault. He went on to achieve passage of the Affordable Care Act with Wilsonian promises that will forever be linked to his name. But unlike Wilson's war to end all wars, which was not proven a lie until its author had passed from this world, Obamacare inconveniently began unraveling before it was even launched. And so 2013 may prove to be the year the progressive spell was finally broken. The crash of Obama's signature health care legislation, the Detroit bankruptcy, a hapless foreign policy as ill-defined as the Syrian Red Line, remember that? The meteoric growth of food stamp nation, millions of long-term unemployed leaving the workforce, college graduates begging for jobs while struggling under $1 trillion in loans, the collapse of the global warming juggernaut, the debasement of the dollar with nothing to show for it but a stock market bubble. There are just too many progressive fingerprints on the unbroken string of failures for a good intentions hall pass to carry much weight this time. If Republicans are smart enough to just get out of the way and let Democrats stew in their own juice rather than fall into a string of self-defeating culture war traps, the 2014 midterms could become a wave election. Obama may well come to envy Wilson's inability to carry out the burdens of his office in his administration's final days. Should a 2014 sweep be followed up by a 2016 return of a Republican to the White House, the stupid party will face a difficult choice. Will it allow the old guard to continue spending government, seeking to make the most of its turn at the trough, or will it finally make the painful political choices required to avoid the impending bankruptcy of our underfunded entitlement system? And finally, only the latter will prevent progressives from rising from the ashes of the Obama presidency. And only if pro-growth fiscal and regulatory policies start delivering visible results before the pendulum swings again. This will require the emergence of a great communicator who can articulate a positive vision of the future based on the proven principles of the past. Good luck with that. So he doesn't sound very hopeful in saying that, all the Republicans are going to do is if they get reelected, and suppose they win in 2014, and even in 2016 they win the presidency and let's say even control the Congress. Will they do anything differently as they profess they want to do, or will they just take their turn at the trough, kind of milking government and doing the same things the Democrats did under different words?
Different set of beneficiaries, with the same cost to the taxpayer. Now,
the fact is, the progressive narrative, according to Frezza, has not worked in the past year. Name something in the past year that was done that has worked flawlessly. Name something that has been done so far where people are doing better in this country. All people are doing better in this country as a result of the legislation. We're talking about all people in this country. Name something that has been done in that regard. I would challenge you, 1-800-357-0910. Name something that's been done. The problem is you can go out and you can preach what sounds very nice and popular. I want world peace. I want everybody to have a job. I want everybody to do well. And that sounds wonderful. I want a minimum wage at $15. Why don't let's do this. Let's
make it $100.
Make it $100. Why stop at $15? Make it $100. And then you'll hear a liberal come back and say, well, that doesn't make sense. That's ridiculous. Why? Why is it any more ridiculous than $15 an hour?
If you go to 15 now and 20 the next year and then 30 and you eventually get to 100, why not just start there?
Yeah, if you're a small business person, okay, and you're saying, geez, I can't afford that. You can't afford 15. You can't afford 50 either. All right, but the bottom line is, why should these people have to go through a first-level job to get up to management? Let's get them to management right away.
Well, you can see the crack in the argument, too, Gary, is the minimum wage begins to climb, and it has in a couple places around the country. Yesterday, as a matter of fact, in a place called SeaTac out in Washington, the minimum wage went to $15 an hour.
Right.
The immediate pushback from that was from the hotel industry and the others around the airport to start laying people off.
Yeah, and
so great. Right, the people who remain get the minimum, but the others don't have jobs.
So tell me about how progressivism has worked in this past year, other than to go out and spout a whole lot of things that really have yet to come true.
They sound so good.
And again, keep in mind, here's the two competing philosophies I think you have. And Republicans know better, by the way. You're sitting here. I liked what he called them, the stupid party, because they are. They're not a whole lot better. So this isn't a Republican versus Democrat. This is the idea of, okay, what is going to make sense? The idea of saying all these wonderful things and then having no plan to carry them out. If all these wonderful things could be carried out, tell me why our cities are in the condition they're in right now over the past 50 years. Most of them being blue state cities, most of them being democratically or progressively controlled. We just saw Dick de Blasio elected in New York City. Can't wait to see what he brings to the table. And people say, well, yeah, we got to keep electing those people. Have you ever seen more stupidity in your entire life where these people, what are they doing? They keep on giving you stuff to keep you mollified just long enough to elect them again, and then they'll give you a few more things. But what are they doing to help you be better? What are they doing to help you step to another level? That's a big question. Progressives, how'd they do this past year? And somebody, if you're a progressive out there, you call yourself that, explain why your way works and somehow this guy's wrong in his article. Would love to hear someone explain in English how progressivism has helped us in the last year, perhaps in the last 5 years. What victory can they show in terms of results for all Americans that have really been positive? When you say the word progressive sounds pretty good. It sounds like something that should be going forward. And I know a couple of you tried to call in right at the end of the last segment. The beginning of this one is open for you right now, 1-800-357-0910. We were talking about this article by Bill Frezza in Forbes, where he talked about two fundamental techniques. Number one, progressives go out and they spin the narrative. And, of course, they have, for the most part, the mainstream media on their side, made up of primarily progressives and liberals, who go out and say, okay, yeah, here's a great idea. We're going to get people insurance, for example, that they've never had before. Well, that's a good thing, right? I mean, that sounds great. They don't mention there that we're also going to screw over the rest of the population in order to do that. Okay, why do we think that way? And then the second part of it is, once it doesn't work, which it increasingly has never worked over history, we've seen it time and time again. You can call it whatever you want to. You can call it Soviet Socialist Republic in Russia. You can call it Cuba. You can call it wherever you want to go and find out that communism and socialist stuff and redistribution of stuff does not work. It has happened over and over again.
It sounds so good, Gary.
And the reason it doesn't work is because, here's something. It's contrived. It's contrived. What does work is authenticity. Authenticity in how you spend, how you save, what you buy. That has worked in the United States over the years. It's the reason we have become the number one power in the world. Now, you may not like certain aspects of that. You may not like the fact that there are going to be losers in society sometimes. But are the losers there because other people are doing well? Or are the losers there because they refuse to jump over some of the blocks that you have to jump over sometimes to get to success? Because we all have a relative, I think, opportunity in this country, at least better than any other country that I've seen, to be successful. But if you want success handed to you for no effort and no ability to jump over some of the hoops and some of the things that you were presented that maybe the guy next to you was not, that's not going to work. You're going to have to maybe do more work. I'm going to have to do more work than Joel because maybe I'm not as smart as Joel is. I'm going to have to maybe go out because I lived in a bad area where people have a certain way of thinking, and I've got to get rid of that before I can move forward. We cannot equal up the playing ground to the nth degree for everybody. It's not equal. And we definitely can't equal up the results coming out the other side if equal work wasn't put in. And even then, it might not be fair. Joel might get hired for a job and we might be dead equal and I don't get hired. Well, I got screwed because Joel's wealthier now. No, I got screwed because of the fact that Joel happened to be in the right place at the right time, maybe had a better interview than I did at that moment. Maybe he is more proficient at it than I am. Well, I can hardly believe that. But no, but in all seriousness, I mean, that's what we come down to. Should we all be complaining about our lot in life because someone else screwed us? That is the progressive message in many cases. Yeah, you should. Whole system sucks.
And leave it up to the government to take care of that.
Exactly.
It's not your fault, Gary.
The doers have been screwing you over for a while, you non-doers, or whatever you want to call yourselves. So therefore, we're riding in the horse here to save you. And how have they saved us in the last 50 to 60 years? Bring something up. 1-800-357-0910. Let's go to the phone lines. Rich in East Berlin, you're first up. Go ahead, Rich. Your turn to make the call.
And most progressives, all their problems are solved by money and programs, and then we're broke. We are broke. It hasn't worked. I look at it like a pendulum. When things shift, they shift far left. They're going to swing back, and they swing far left enough, fast enough. It's going to come back to the right. That much quicker too. We are a right-leaning country, But the progressives, when you don't instill integrity and personal perseverance and doing for yourself, and you're going to coddle somebody, you are setting us up for failure. Our future generations are failure. There's a saying too. Once the economy's going to implode. I see it. Mm-hmm. There's a saying though. Those that could. Those that could wouldn't. Basically means when it comes down to it, the people that will don't have the money, and the people that do have the money aren't going to do it. You've hit
another point, and here are two arguments you're hearing lately. Number one, we have all these rich people out there that have trillions of dollars sitting on the sidelines. Why aren't they invested in this country right now? Well, in real life, they don't invest because they don't see a good climate right now in which to invest because of so many question marks out there economically, not the least of which is Obamacare. Okay, so they might not go out there and invest because they're waiting for the right moment. We ought not be forced to invest. We have the freedom in this country to invest our money where we'd like to, where we think the best thing is that we are going to get some kind of return back. That's called business. The second point that I think you hit on, in order to be a progressive, and also, by the way, I'll say conservative right now, too, because conservatives, many of them are running around with this name conservative and don't have a damn idea what it's about. You can't have respect for other people's money. In other words, you have respect for your own money and where you spend your stuff. But when it comes to being a representative anymore, you can't have respect for other people's money, or else you wouldn't come up with some of the programs you come up with and lay it out there like Obamacare has been in such a slipshod manner and expect them to work. Can you?
No. It's all about feel good and emotion and let's do the right thing. You're doing the wrong thing by people. No one thinks logically, critically.
Right.
We don't reason anymore. We're playing games, watching our young kids. I mean, I'm not, when I say it, I don't mean everybody. I mean a large swath of us are so pacified, being entertained, and our country is basically going to implode around us. And then what happens, guys?
Yeah, Rich, you're all over it, man. Thanks so much. Appreciate the call. Let's go to Don very quickly in Ortana. Don, you're next up. Go ahead, Don. Your turn to make the call.
Well, you asked how did the progressives, or did they do anything successfully?
Yes.
And I think they did. I think they are, in fact, consolidating their constituency base by finding ever more ways to divide the country. And hasn't it already passed the tipping point to where there are more takers than makers?
Yeah.
And when they do that, when they're successful at doing that, the country is, in fact, lost. Because just as you were saying, people say, why should I work hard if I'm going to be guaranteed a life, a living, and with more and more luxuries, and I can just sit around and do nothing? It will eventually come to total collapse. And then what happens in all communist states? Forced labor.
You got it.
And you're saying Republicans are the party of the stupid. No, the progressive voters are the stupid ones if they can't see that.
But I'm saying if the Republicans are continue to do it the way they did it, when you see Republicans spending frivolously on things, are they just taking, as Freza mentioned in his article, another turn at the trough when they get in there? If nothing changes in terms of the look at how we're supposed to run this country, then it becomes the same thing, just under a different name.
You just put a different label on it, Gary. You have a different set of constituencies, but it's the same problem.
Don, great stuff this morning.
That is stupid. Thanks, bye.
Thank you so much, and Happy New Year to you. We're going to come back and get Joe in Dover. We'll take your calls as well. 1-800-357-0910. Talking about progressivism, and has it produced anything good in our country in the past year, maybe the past 5 years? And again, it's nice to have the nice words, but when it goes bad, who accepts responsibility? Well, the second point of progressivism is we put out the lofty, nice terms, and that's enough. Okay, then we'll let somebody else work it out. Well, the problem is if somebody else that works it out says, I don't really know this thing's going to work. And then you ask them to come help you work it out. And isn't it ironic right now that in Obamacare, they're going to the private sector, who they tend to disdain, to try to work things out for the public sector, which couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag here? Just a thought. What do you think? Has progressivism done anything good for our country in the past year? And the point that was made a moment ago, I thought, by the caller, was that, they've divided the country more. Well, isn't that nice to rest your hat on? Is that the job of going in and dividing the country up more? Let's go to Joe in Dover. Joe, you're next up. Go ahead, Joe. It's your turn to make the call. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you guys. Progressivism may possibly work, but only when your base is secure. And what I'm saying, I'm only saying pieces of it, as far as getting ahead a little bit incrementally at a time. You don't come in and change one system for another system. The major problem in this country is jobs. 5.5 years or 5 years ago, they came in. They said they could create jobs. They couldn't. If you looked at their background, none of them ever worked in the private sector. They didn't know, so that was a big lie to give themselves an office. If we had jobs out there, we wouldn't be hearing about minimum wage increases. We wouldn't be hearing about taking the lip off of unemployment and taking the cap off of all the other giveaway programs.
Right.
How is it that in the Social Security situation, with the definition used to be either you're terminal or you can absolutely do another job, that's changed to give everybody disability that wants it and all kinds of other people unbelievable amounts of unemployment? It's because they haven't created jobs. When we have a lot of jobs and everybody's working, everybody's happy. We feel like we're a team, that we're pulling together. You take a cart and a donkey, or a cart and a donkey down the road, and the donkey dies, somebody's going to have to get out and pull the cart. But after a while, if you have more people in the cart than you do have pulling the cart, it's going to go nowhere. And that's exactly what's going to happen in our society if we keep allowing the takers to continually take and the people at the top continually giving those programs to takers so they can control power.
Wow.
This is a bad situation, and I hope it's straightened out.
Great observations, Joe. Thank you so much this morning. And finally, I want to get John in New York here quickly before we run out of time. John, go ahead. Your turn to make the call. Happy New Year to you.
Gary, why do we get sinus infections every year this time?
Like me? Yeah, I know. It's terrible.
I know. Well, I think what the progressives have done is have kept their ship going straight ahead, and the Republicans have done the same thing, and we're continuing along the line of probably the greatest oligarchy that the world has ever seen.
You know, that's a really and here's the problem with people who are on the side that you think might be right. And they say, oh, well, I should be apologetic. And you hear them all the time. They try to somehow compromise and coalesce and say, oh, let's get together. And I remember in Trent Lott a few years ago, the Republicans had the majority in the Senate. And he said, we're going to share this because there's only a one vote difference. I mean, you don't compromise with people who are wrong. And if they have a program that's wrong, you say it's wrong. You say, here's why it's not working. I've got a better idea. And you go out there and say, I'm going to do it in the way that has made sense for our country for a long time. And if you're not going to do that, then you're wrong too.
Well, compromise is one thing, Gary. Capitulation is something altogether different.
Very quickly, John, about 20 seconds.
Okay. The problem is both parties allow it. It used to be that you could start a small business, and now all the regulations that have been brought about by the larger corporations, they grease the palms and say, we need this. And that blocks people entering that business. So it's competition and it's protection of that competition.
And the thing about the competition is that it needs to come back, and I come back to this all the time, it needs to be authentic. It needs to be real. It needs to be truthful. That's the way our country has run. Now, you can say, well, it got a lot of graft and corruption. There's no question. And where it is, we should root it out and destroy it. But, the bottom line is our country has been based on this whole idea. And I'll take my shot with the ethics of people who are trying to do business, especially the small businesses in this country. Hey, thank you so much, John. Appreciate the call. Final thoughts this morning. Go ahead, Joel.
Well, one of the things we talked about during the break, Gary, is some sports analogies. For some reason, we would never turn off the scoreboards.
Yeah.
Even at the lowest levels. I guess the kids start out sometimes without scoring, but eventually the scores get kept. We don't equalize those scores. Why do we want to turn off the scoreboard in life?
Well, it's a great statement. It really is. And, the idea, like yesterday, someone would come out and say, well, it really shouldn't have been 52-48. They had better athletes than we did. Geez, we ought to even those up a little bit, and that'll make things all better.
And how many games do you think you'd have next week?
I wouldn't even want to watch. If every game is going to be a tie, why watch? Just a thought. And, when you look around in this new year, maybe one of the best things we can say to people in terms of a resolution would be, let's go out and try to figure out ways to be more free, to be more independent, and we're going to have a lot better nation as a result.
Sounds good to me, Gary.
Just my thoughts this morning. How's that? Tomorrow on the Morning News, Dr. Nick Pandelides will join us at 6:10. We'll get into all kinds of things about Obamacare. What's going to happen now with the new rollout this year, we'll find out. Have a great day, everyone. It's 9 o'clock.